Hey everyone, Margarita here. This is Sunday, February 23rd, 2025, and I want to film this video today because there's been another gas spill caused by Ford Motor Company right where my house sits here in Flat Rock, Michigan. And due to my condition and my brain tissue still being open, which is the blood-brain barrier, which was initially compromised with my second brain injury when I had a 4-hour brain swelling episode, and the entire thing swelled up and broke through, leaving me dead in my bed for 4 hours before I came to on my own later that night. Now the effects of that are still ongoing. I have been through over $165,000 in treatment to this day. I am still in need of future treatment. In 2021, I was very close to having a lot of that brain tissue sealed, and it made its way from the back. It started sealing from the back up and from the sides up, and it sealed all the way this way because the blood-brain barrier coats the entire brain, and that's what protects any toxins, gases, particles of any kind from getting into one's system. Without that intact, every breath of every type of substance, particle, gas, chemicals, anything, foods, toxins in the foods, drinks, stuff like that, everything goes right through, including anything injected as well, or soaked into the skin. So my system is extremely fragile. All of that, since all of that was broken, everything goes right through and in through my system, flowing through my open brain tissue. Sometimes it loads up in knots. Sometimes it depends on how much has been taken in. Sometimes it flows through, goes through my entire body, and comes out in buckets of sweat very quickly. It depends on the level, the particle level, and what has been taken in. But in 2021, I was very close to having all of that sealed after going through everyday treatment for years. And the police here in Flat Rock, Michigan, specifically Sergeant Matthew Wilczynski, falsely arrested me out of my own home where I was completely homebound for years. This was my safe space. I could not have particles of any kind whatsoever because it was so fragile and still so open. I couldn't go anywhere or do anything for all of that period of time because no particles from anywhere could come into my system. So I only went to treatment and back for years. And due to that re-injury that he caused in May of 21, it blew back basically all of that tissue that had been repaired. All of this got re-injured all the way back here when all of this was almost done completely being repaired. And it was up to my forehead, where I believe it stops about like right here. So I was very close to having it 100% sealed. I probably still would have needed about a year of everyday treatment from that point, and then would have had to remove myself for several months and still be homebound and not come in contact with any particles of any kind for that to seal after all of that treatment. So, when that all happened, it caused significantly more damage. And due to that, well, I guess you could say that was the third brain injury. Due to that, this is all reopened, and it's not been sealed back since, because a couple months after that happened, I began having to self-pay for all of my treatments. And this was due to numerous reasons. I'll talk about that in a different video. But I did have my private insurance paying for the majority of my treatment. My son's was all out of pocket, but mine was covered by my private health insurance, and it was not their responsibility to pay. But for about 2.5 years, they did pay for my treatments. But since that day in 2021, it was in the summer of 2021, I began to have to self-pay. So I still had about everyday treatment after the initial incident with Sergeant Matthew Wilczynski and him falsely arresting me, exposing me to a bunch of carbon monoxide, especially after my head was hit off of my garage floor. So the sagging, throbbing spot in the back of my head was significantly re-injured, And then I was exposed to a whole bunch of carbon monoxide because he did not believe that I can't have any carbon monoxide whatsoever, and the seriousness of my condition, because he was receiving delusional phone calls from my mother in the background stating that I've never had a condition. It's always been a mental disorder. Other people pay my bills. That's how I live in the house that I have. And none of that was real. And I was very seriously injured and sick, and I fought and fought and fought to stay alive, and had just barely crossed the threshold shortly before that day, knowing if I was even going to get to live or not. Now, I did get to live. However, I don't really have quality of life. So, take that with a grain of salt. Do you really want to live long term when you're stuck in a condition as serious as mine, dealing with continuous symptoms? There's a difference between living and having quality of life and living. So, that did happen, and it's never been repaired because the treatment has been self-pay shortly after that incident. So this is all still open from here. This is all open because of what happened in 2021. And then shortly after that, Ford Motor Company spilled the 15,000 gallons of gasoline where my house sits, which had initially forced me from my home. My mother inserted herself in that situation, got them to cut our hotel off. Ford was paying for our hotel for 2 months. But they were lying about the gases being contained, and it was actually being spread everywhere, over 50 miles away. They had to spread it and flush it everywhere into the rivers, the lakes, the sewer systems. It spread everywhere. So they were telling people in the news, telling people in the area that everything was fine. Everything's not fine. My brain tissue's open. I don't need somebody to tell me where the gas particles are, because everything flows straight through my system. And so I suffer immediate symptoms upon every breath. It goes straight in. It loads up in knots, depending on how much particles are out there. It's loading in knots. It's going straight through, and then it comes out in buckets of sweat, because there's no protection over my brain, which is the blood-brain barrier. That's what stops all that from ever happening to anybody, and it's just not intact, due to me having to self-pay for treatment from 2021 to current. There hasn't been enough treatment to repair the damage that Sergeant Matthew Wilczynski is responsible for. So now I'm on the third gas bill. That initial one ended up forcing me from my home and having to buy another home. And then the people who were staying in my home during that time, for 1 year, did $100,000 in damage while I was away waiting for the particles to clear so I could come home and live comfortably. I was living in this room on the floor with my brain bleeding and my inner ears itching. And so was my youngest son, who's injured with me, during that first gas bill. So after our hotel was cut off, this is the room we were forced to stay in. We were forced to be on the floor. The floor is where the level is the clearest, even being up on the couch that much higher off the ground. It's a significant difference in the particles. So when you get really close to the ground in this room, it was the clearest. Now this room has the most walls between where the sewer flow line is from where Ford's holding tanks are, where it holds the gas, and it goes down the front of my house. So this room has several walls between the front of the house and the back. So this room is the clearest. Now, I wasn't unable to use the upstairs portion of my home. I couldn't be up there it was about 3 years. Could not use my bedroom, could not use the upstairs portion of my home. That is why we ended up leaving and buying the other home and getting ourselves to safety. And our symptoms with the brain bleeding and the inner ear itching and the particles loading up in our brain and our systems, it was so intolerable. And also I was still working regularly at this time, at least struggling to try to keep everything going to generate some income. So I had to travel to and from work during that as well. So each trip, anywhere I went, these particles, mind you, I did say they spread over 50 miles out, which is pretty much anywhere I'd be traveling to. So those particles were loading up in my brain during every trip that I had to make. And then we were also having to treat to keep our systems from overloading with these particles during that time, which was 100% self-pay for both of us during that time. So I was doing 2 treatments a week for me and 1 for my son, and he had to stay completely home, and I stayed completely home with an exception of me going to work those 2 or 3 nights a week and to the treatment center and back. Those 2, it was about well, it was 2 days total. So I was treating 2 days and he would treat with me one of the days, and we didn't go anywhere else until we got ourselves out of here, got ourselves to safety. So, um, now those people did all that damage to my home. I'm still working on the home. It's been 20 months and I'm still working on the home, still arguing with the homeowner's insurance on the rest of the funds to put everything back together. The entire home was completely destroyed, and I had just remodeled it right before they moved in. So, there's a lot of problems that have come out of this injury. These are crimes. There's a lot of large agencies and people involved in what has happened. Now, this is the third spill that Ford has done altogether. So the first one in 2021, there was another one about 5-6 months ago, and now there's another one. So when this happens, the particles raise up, and it depends on the weather. Right now it's been very cold since the spill, so the particles stay lower to the ground and in the sewer system. However, it's been about 3 weeks, so the particles are starting to raise up. There has been quite a bit of snow, and I'm not really able to assess about how much has spilled or how long I think this may take to clear until it warms up a little bit. Now, when that happens, I'm most likely going to have to shelter in place and not leave anywhere for weeks to months, because I do know how this works, unfortunately, at this point. So my eyes are looking very saggy, my eyelids especially, because I'm heavily neurotoxic. Like I said, this is all open, so everything goes through, every breath of anything in the air. It's not a smell. These are particles that go straight through. Nobody else can notice this. Nobody else is walking around with their blood-brain barrier open. So the particles are loading up. They go inside and they're loading into my brain, which then load up above my eyelids and make all this puffy and saggy because I'm not treating properly right now. I'm just treating when I absolutely have to. When it becomes life or death, it's life or death every day. But if too long goes by and we have eventually we have so many exposures, we have to go. We don't have a choice, or we won't be alive. So I'm not treating properly right now, and my home chamber is out of commission. So it is just loading up and loading up, which is causing all of the puffiness in my eyes and then heavy neurotoxicity. All those particles load up. It's very heavy. It's very heavy in my brain, on top of the fact that I also have 5 brain injuries. So each one of those is a contributing factor alone. And then when you put all those together, along with the carbon monoxide that's overloaded in my system, it's an extremely serious situation. So what has happened is, a couple nights ago, I noticed the particles were making its way through my, in through my bedroom window. They go straight through the windows. This window behind me faces the back of the home. So it tends to have less gas in the back rooms of the home because the flow line in the sewer system is in the front of the house. Now, once it starts to clear and flush and spread, and it depends on if people are actually physically flushing it or if they're just using natural precipitation to carry it all away, it makes a big difference. So currently I'm not sure of the status of that. But the back of the home tends to have less particles, even though it does go through all of the windows. It goes straight through the window panes. So I went to Dollar Tree and I've got quite a bit of tarps, plastic drop cloth tarps, and quite a bit of tape. And I'm going to be taping up the most significant windows here today in a little bit. And I'm now on the main floor. So the last couple days, those particles made their way through my bedroom window. I woke up drenched in sweat, complete buckets of sweat with the particles loaded up in knots inside my brain. So I did use some ear candles to remove quite a bit of it. It was not 100% removed, but I did remove, a significant portion to relieve some of the pressure and some of the symptoms in the inner ear itching, which is, it's very uncomfortable to live that way, because you can't just itch it. What it is my brain is bleeding and it's dripping out of my ears at a very, very slow pace. And those ear candles will pull the blood out, which is causing that itching. So I'll probably draw a diagram or several diagrams of the internal portions of the brain and how things load up pertaining to my injury and what happens when there's re-exposures, and what had happened initially. So I'll draw several pictures just to give everybody a good idea of what it's like to live like this, because it's not tolerable to live this way. So in the last 2 days, I've came back down. This was the room we slept in when we were forced out of our hotel once my mother inserted herself in the gas leak and got them to cut our hotel off. We stayed in this room on the floor until some of the particles were cleared, and it depends on the temperature. We were able to sleep on the couches in here some of that time back in 2022. So this is the room that we're back in. This is the clearest room in the home. This and my kitchen over there. These are the clearest rooms. So, and it has to do with where the flow line is, where the sewer system is, where the gas spilled from, where it spreads to, and then the positioning and how the house is set up with walls in between where those flow lines are. So this will probably be where I'm contained to for weeks to months all over again. So I have been sleeping on the floor in this room again. And I'm just thankful I was able to gut the home, get everything out of it, get it repaired to a certain degree. At least the main floor is almost 100% done. So, you know, I'm really grateful I was able to like get the flooring in, get everything put back together, because the way I found my home when I came back 1 year after being gone was equivalent to the recent story that came out about the Pontiac woman who left her 3 kids home alone since, I believe it was 2020. And they were just pulled out of there days ago or a week or two ago, maybe. They were left there for 4 years unattended. And if I had left this home here for 4 years that way, that is exactly what I would have found when I came here. I was gone. It was a little over a year when I found the damage, and I had to evict them, get everybody out, get everything out, all the materials of the home, the subfloor included. They flooded the entire house at the kitchen sink, left the water running for God knows how long. These kids don't have basic life skills. They're not taught to, you know, you go in the bathroom, turn on the light, you use the bathroom, you flush the toilet, you wash your hands, you shut the sink off, you shut the light off. None of them were ever taught any of that. Same with the kitchen sink. They're just all running by, grabbing glasses of water, leaving the water running, and no one shuts it off because no one's ever been instructed. The woman never taught her kids day-to-day functioning and instruction and how to get through each aspect of the day. So these kids were running wild in this house. There was food and drink on every single wall. These were my brand new blinds that I'd spent over $3,000 putting them in right before they had moved in. Literally the whole house was completely remodeled right before they moved in. And she tried to say that the home had some leak that no one knew about for years, and that's what caused all this damage. I will show the videos to everything once I get everything situated with my homeowner's insurance and I get a little bit more of the work done. I have been filming along the way with those videos and the damage to the home, so I will show everybody what went on in that situation. But it is comparable to what was found and the woman that was charged. And this lady should have been charged as well to do over 100 grand in damage to somebody's home. You have a Section 8 voucher, you don't pay anything. Your kids are being left alone at times. I'm pretty sure they were left here home alone, even though one of them was technically old enough to be home alone. None of them had the proper life skills to be home alone or to watch over one another. So they were all just running through here with no supervision, food and drink on every wall. She'd come back and forth from time to time and check on them, and she was somewhere else. And at one time she did have another lady here who I specifically said I did not want in the home. And that lady had 3 kids as well. So the woman that stayed here had 7 kids. Then she had the friend here with 3 kids. So 10 kids were up in here, running through here, just destroying everything. And I know the lady with the 3 kids that was here from time to time, she was too big to get up the steps. So there was definitely no supervision going on in the upstairs portion of the home. These kids had destroyed this entire house, and it is very comparable to that situation in Pontiac, Michigan. I literally had to replace the subfloor and take every housing material out of this house. So it has taken me, I've had the home back for about 13 and a half months. I've been working on that the majority of that time. And I will show all the videos because it is such a shame that nobody stepped in and took these kids from the woman and these children who did the damage to my home. And there's no consequences, and nobody's paid anything except for me. And I'm here suffering physically from my own symptoms. And the house, I should have never been forced from my home in the first place. These are crimes crimes. They tie back to the Flat Rock Police Department, Sergeant Matthew Wilczynski, Ford Motor Company. My mother's involved in the mix. Now you have the lady who did all the damage and her 7 children. CPS didn't do anything about it. They were bamboozled by the big house when they showed up. I know they received numerous calls because all of the people who helped me work on the home right before they moved in were very pissed off at what had occurred when they saw the damage. So quite a few people had called CPS on her because the home took a lot of money and a lot of work and a lot of time to get it to where we had it, and then to have it all destroyed in 1 year. So this is what I've been working on for the entire year, and I mostly took the entire year. I had no choice because I have limited functioning. So I mostly took the entire year off work, and I'm getting to the point I can't really work anymore anyways due to my condition and the lack of treatment. So this is what we've been working on, and I'm thankful that I was able to at least get this room put back together with the flooring, get some furniture into the home, and get some rugs and, area rugs to make it comfortable, because the floor is the safest place for me to be. So this is where I will probably be sleeping for the foreseeable future, because there's been so much damage, so much corruption, so much chaos, that I'm already under Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So I'm basically forced to live here with my brain bleeding, with the particles from Ford's most recent gas spill loading up in my brain with every breath. And I'm going to come back and do an update on how all that's going, because the weather is about to break in the next day or two. And that's going to give me a better idea of exactly how much spilled and how long this should take to clear. So I'll be back with another one. Thanks.